Hi, everyone. We are so excited you've joined us for this session on building a high-performing customer success power team, where we will give you the framework and tools you need to build your own adoption plan and perform an adoption health assessment. By the end of this session, you will have started to build an actionable adoption plan to drive your desired adoption outcomes and learn about tactical self-serve tools that will help you identify adoption blockers and understand the health of your organization's applications. My name is Emily Strickland DeMarco, and I'm a Business Applications Customer Success Manager at Microsoft. And I will be co-presenting today with my peer, Sophia.
Great. And hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Kim. I'm also a Customer Success Manager for Business Applications at Microsoft. I'll be joining Emily in the second half to talk to you all about the adoption health assessment portion.
Awesome. And also, before we get started, please feel free to ask questions or put comments and thoughts in the chat. We will be doing a live Q&A at the end of the session. Okay, so in this first section, we'll discuss why a strong adoption plan is needed, and then I'll be walking you through how to build your own adoption plan. So why do we even need a plan? Why do we care about adoption of technology? When business and technical changes go unmanaged, research shows that only 16% of users will adopt the technology or process change. That means more than 80% of users are not gaining value from a technology that you invested in. This poses the risk of lower, if not negative, ROI. So how do we prevent or remediate low adoption? When there's effective change management, projects are more likely to be successful, 6 times more likely to be successful, actually. So the tools that we'll walk through are great starting points to implement effective change management. So, of course, one of the first questions you may have asked yourself or even been asked is, where do we start on our adoption journey? The first step of our journey is assembling a strong, diverse adoption team. These same folks, as well as some other stakeholders, will then help define your adoption objectives and assess your adoption readiness and maturity. Once you've determined your current state and your desired future state, then the tactical steps can be laid out to form your adoption plan that you will finally take action on to achieve your desired outcomes and ROI. So, what do you say? Let's actually walk through this journey together. The first step we're going to take is building your adoption team. There are 3 key stakeholder groups that are critical to a successful adoption effort. These stakeholders should be engaged early and often. First, executive sponsors. I would argue that executive sponsors will make or break a successful launch and adoption of a technology. This sponsor should be C-suite or VP level, and they should have the ability to influence strategic initiatives. They should also be willing to serve as an advocate for the vision and strategy of an application or technology. The second and third stakeholder groups will be your success owners. They could be business unit managers, application admins, implementation partners, champions, anyone who you would qualify as an early adopter. And these folks are likely directly measured on the outcomes of an app or the outcomes that an app is driving, and their role heavily relies on an app being delivered valuably. So they hold really high stakes in the success of adoption. A few things to consider for this team. Different members may be needed due to the nature of an app. So a CRM and an ERP app might have very different team members. And likewise, an adoption team for low code might also be even more different. So finally, consider that stakeholders will most likely be needed from both a project and an operational perspective. Think about the implementation team versus the team that you will need to sustain and grow a solution. And so, just as an example of structure, we've seen many customers adopt a COE or a Center of Excellence structure to build out the life cycle of a strong adoption team far past implementation. Okay, so once your adoption team is established, one of the first exercises they should do is determine the strategy and intent for adoption, effectively setting a path for success. So let's imagine I'm facilitating this discussion with your adoption team, and we will work through this together. Starting off with adoption strategy and intent. Let's think about why the adoption of an application is important to your team and organization. There will most likely be many different answers and perspectives on this, and that is okay. Maybe you're implementing an app in hopes of fostering more team collaboration or creating a better customer experience. Or maybe it's modernizing your technology to a sustainable cloud platform. You and your success team need to define and agree on your why. Next, let's think about adoption outcomes. What are some outcomes you'd expect to get from better adoption of an application? So, for example, if our strategic intent was to improve customer experience, what measurable goals would you want to achieve? What about increasing revenue, increasing customer retention, proactively serving customers with data driven decisions? Just to name a few. And finally, what would it look like if your adoption outcomes were achieved? How will you know that you've reached your desired adoption goals? What are observable behaviors that you would expect to see? So a good example of the type of metric that we try to capture is a very quantifiable one. So a customer recently shared with me that they have saved hundreds of hours for their team every single month by simply improving the user experience in an app. And that directly correlated to increased time that they could spend serving their customers and reducing call resolution times. So we want them to be very quantifiable metrics that we can measure in the lives of our application users. And no matter what these reasons are, it's important that your adoption team works to define them, document them, and communicate them to increase the understanding of what's in it for me. Okay, so now you've completed the second step of the adoption planning journey, and it's time to determine the next steps you should take to actually achieve those desired outcomes you just identified. And we're going to do this by assessing your adoption readiness. And we base our pillars of readiness off of research partners like Gartner, APQC, ProSci, and CMMI. For this assessment, the 4 pillars of readiness we will measure are vision and strategy, business process, change management, and data and insights. So to help you understand this method of measuring readiness, let's walk through this as if we are on the same adoption team together. So starting with vision and strategy, you'll want to think about how clear and well-defined are business cases. How well-defined are the KPIs or success metrics? What is your ability to track and report on those metrics? When we're answering these questions, we want to determine where we fall on this 5-level scale. Level 1, indicating that people may know about a certain initiative, but it's not at the forefront of their minds. And up to a level 5, which means that this initiative is impacting the direction of an organization. So let's find your level. Starting at level 1, is your strategy undefined? And are your success metrics undefined? If you're not sure, take a look at the 3 bullets to the right. Have you completed all 3? If yes, then move on to level 2. If not, your current level of readiness in the category of vision and strategy is a 1. And you'll increase levels by completing the checklist items on the right. Whatever your level is, add those corresponding items to your adoption plan as tactical next steps. And we'll share a template here for a plan in a little bit. It's also important to note that a lower level is not a bad thing. It is simply your lived experience today to help guide you to your future state. Okay, let's move on. In the area of business process, Think about what is changing and how the business drives improvement. A low level of readiness would look like ad hoc processes that have little alignment and impact on the overarching strategy. And a high level would be your business processes being absolutely critical to delivering organization wide goals. Now, I will note that all of these pillars, you'll notice that even at the highest level of readiness, there is still action attached to it. So, for example, here, revisiting strategy and intent, revisiting the members of your adoption team. And that is because adoption does not stop. It is cyclical and it must be continuously evaluated and managed. So, speaking of change management, let's next assess the area of change management. How effective are you at managing change in your organization? How intentional are you at managing change through a programmatic approach where all activities are planned, measured, and reported? At the highest level, you should strive to make change management part of your organization's DNA because it is that important. Research shows that 70% of business solution failures are attributed to non technology related causes like unaligned strategy, unaligned business processes, and poor change management. And because it is so important to the success of a project, it's really helpful to have someone who is educated in change management methodologies. So if your organization doesn't have a dedicated change manager, definitely consider adding a partner to your success team. Many of them specialize in change management and can help decrease the change that not only your organization is going to go through, but decrease the change that your team is going to be experiencing as well. And finally, let's assess data and insights. So here we're really thinking, how effective does the business manage and leverage data to deliver on overarching vision and strategy? So a good example of level one here would be manual reporting and one-off data management efforts. At the highest level, reports are not just dynamic, but they are critical to the organization's survival in a competitive market. So you are using the data to drive your business decisions. And of course, in this section and others, there is a middle ground of levels. You and your teams will need to carefully and honestly evaluate your current state to build an adoption plan that will lead you to your desired outcomes and future state. So, how do we take the work that we've done so far in this adoption journey and translate it into an actionable plan? Well, plans can take many forms. We do believe that it can be as simple as this example. Here we can see the 4 pillars of readiness aligned to best practices and actions. They are assigned to a success owner, and a target completion date is also aligned. So before we move on from a more overarching strategic planning conversation to a more tactical one with Sophia, the objective of this plan is to drive adoption for organizations who are planning to implement or have recently implemented an application. The goal is to drive adoption from the very start. But what if you've already implemented an application and haven't achieved your desired adoption or business goals? Sophia, I think you have an amazing tool that can help us answer that question.
All right, switching gears, let's talk about our adoption health assessment tool. Emily did a great job talking about this strategy, but we understand sometimes there's a need for a systematic approach as well. And we believe there's no better time than now to focus on optimizing your adoption health. At Microsoft, we're passionate about helping customers reach their maximum adoption health. And this has led to an exciting launch of our new adoption health assessment tool that's available to all of our business application customers. This session is going to provide you with the knowledge of the tool, its application, and showcase how the results will immediately help you build a stronger adoption plan. The Adoption Health Assessment is a methodical tool geared towards customers who are ready to assess their overall Dynamics 365 adoption and build an action-based plan towards their big transformation goals. You might think, why is this important now? Well, we've worked with many customers who struggle to identify the root cause of their adoption challenges. We also understand that people may not be able to dedicate a ton of resources and time to assessing their entire organization. which hinders them from building a targeted action plan that achieves their long-term success. Our assessment was created to address those root cause issues and bring you a proven solution that provides immediate value and impact for organizations. The value differentiators are simple. The first, this assessment is available as a short online survey that can be taken anytime with any department that uses business applications. We've eliminated the guesswork and created a framework for you that allows you to quickly assess and measure current baselines across 5 key adoption components. The second, the assessment will help you identify where there may be adoption challenges and help you understand how to prioritize which areas to tackle first when building an adoption action plan. Third, this is a great opportunity to gain direct user feedback and use those insights to drive operational excellence and build a delightful user experience that is informed by data and best practice results. And lastly, we have collected some of our best resources using Microsoft's self-serve options to help you build an actionable plan that will accelerate business value and adoption at your organization. So while this assessment is systematic in its approach, it still requires a strong organizational team to shepherd the value and impact of its delivery. We've identified 2 key stakeholder groups in this process. First, you'll want to identify an executive sponsor. This role will typically be a VP level liaison between business and IT. They should sponsor business applications used at the organization and de facto see the adoption health assessment as a critical initiative to success. Second, you'll need an assessment lead. This person will likely be a team leader or business unit manager who is intimately aware of the application's projects and manages the functional and/or technical end users. This person is going to be responsible for taking the survey as a representative of their team and will deliver the readout of the assessment in a format that coincides with the organization's roadmap and involves appropriate stakeholders as key decision makers. All right, before we dive into the survey, I'd like to spend a few minutes on our methodology. We've used a combination of Microsoft field experts and research from partners like Gartner and ProSci to compile questions that assess adoption maturity within these categories: user experience, training, change management, adoption and usage, and governance. The goals of taking this assessment are to measure your current adoption maturity and to understand where you must focus on to see improvements. We encourage you to think about what is hindering you from achieving your desired outcomes in these areas. We'll have questions that are generally framed in a manner such as this. For instance, for user experience, is it created to drive efficiency in the least amount of friction for end users? What is the overall effectiveness of your trainings? Do users understand the why behind the event's investment and the expected results by using the application? How is adoption supported and measured at the organization? And lastly, how do you govern, protect, and leverage data? The assessment is executed in 3 simple steps. The assessment lead will take the survey on behalf of a business unit or team. Second, the assessment lead will collect the survey results, which are then simplified for you into scores. This can be translated into deliverable formats, such as what you see in the middle here, a dashboard that highlights opportunities and risks that are going to be relevant for your key stakeholders. Then you can collaborate with organizational teams and stakeholders using some of our best practice templates, as well as resources that are self-service immediately for you today. So without further ado, let me take you through the survey itself so that you can get a live action feed of what it might look like if you were to take the survey. All right, so I've loaded the survey on my screen, and what you're seeing is essentially how you would take the survey yourself. I'm going to go ahead and assume that I'm a customer at Contoso Healthcare. I pre-populated this and an email that will be our test user. I'm also going to set up the scenario here that I'm the assessment lead. I have a team of people behind me. I've collected their feedback, and I'm going to represent the voice of all of their feedback here by taking the assessment. So the first thing you'll notice is you have questions laid out on a 1 through 5 scale. The 1 meaning that you strongly disagree, up to a 5 meaning you strongly agree. Pretty simple. So when I'm reading through the first question, let me take you through how I would think about this. How would your users rate Dynamics 365 ease of use? Well, in this scenario, I'm going to say that I'm a 3 because we just implemented Dynamics and I'm not quite sure how it could be better or worse. In this case, how effectively is Dynamics 365 aligned to your day-to-day business processes? I think it's doing just fine. It's doing an average job, so I'll do a 3 as well. How would users rate their expected output based on time spent in Dynamics 365? Ooh, so this is an area I know that my users have had a hard time, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 2. How would users rate your organization's Dynamics 365 user experience process? I'm going to go ahead and put a 3 as well. So you'll see that on average, it's scoring 3s across the board, which is totally okay. You want to be as transparent as possible so that there's areas to work on and you have true visibility for improvement. So for training, I'm going to go ahead and quickly zip through the rest and score myself 4s because I know that they did a great job setting up and user training from the get-go. Change management, I'll go ahead and put some average scores here, 3s as well as 2s. And obviously you'll want to take your time and actually read through the questions here. But for the sake of a demo, I'm just go ahead and skip through some of these. And for adoption, I'm going to go ahead and say we're also on the higher end. And lastly, for governance, I'm going to give our test user some low scores, just so you can see the variation there. Okay. And once you hit submit, what you're going to notice is that this will then feed the scores into an aggregated summary on the back end, which will be delivered towards your email. Now that I've jumped out of the survey, I'm going to fast forward so you can see my results. In this instance, I have surfaced them up in Power BI for analyzing purposes only. You can use a tool of your choice, such as the original form results format, or pop it into Excel to do the same analysis. As a reminder, each question had a weight of 5 points within a category. The results I'm seeing is the total maturity for each category for Contoso Healthcare, which was my test customer. So 9, 16, 10, 11, 5. What does this actually mean? Well, we've developed methodology to sum up the average results, but also map them into a meaningful rubric-based system to show us our baseline versus the adoption level maturity on a 1 through 5 scale. 1, meaning there's an emerging approach that requires attention, and 5, meaning there's a robust approach that likely incorporates best practice in the industry. All right, so let's zero in on the rubric. As a team lead using Dynamics or Power Platform, I might ask myself, how do I make sense of the data and what does this actually tell me? For 1, I can see that I have an average baseline of the level 2s across user experience and change management. Clearly, this is an area for an opportunity for us. And if I read into the details, it shows me a high-level description of what that score indicates. So for the user experience, it says that it supports day-to-day business operation that relies on workarounds. Pretty true. But to improve to a level 3, reading above, It sounds like I must not rely on workarounds and yield consistent results. Okay, so it gives me actionable next steps and a strategy that I should be thinking about. For change management, a level 2 likely means I don't have a formal change management practice in place, which is a very common starting point for many early stage adopters. To improve reading above, I'd have to start looking into change management programs and begin formalizing specific roles and embedding methods into my projects. I'd also consider how a baseline compares to our desired target range here. Are there any results that surprise us? Say, for instance, governance, which we all know I purposely scored lower, but a level 1 would indicate for us to work into having a strong foundational program as well as technical governance. So this is where, as a customer success manager, I've focused strongly with our customers to really help them educate and establish a strong foundational program. Lastly, I may consider targeting areas of opportunities based on business priorities. For example, where does an organization need immediate attention to accelerate reaching their annual goals? I think Emily would agree here that no score should be seen as good or bad. The hardest part is actually gaining insight and agreement on where to focus. I mentioned a dashboard earlier. So we've created this template for you that nicely captures the scores and corresponding levels. We've also broken down the categories into capabilities that will be measured through our questions and even highlighted areas to call out as top risks and opportunities. The template here is designed to give you full autonomy and power to interpret the results in a way that will resonate with your organization. We want to empower you to think through how your organization can improve their capabilities and decide which data points here will be most meaningful. To help you get started with an action plan, we are supplying a reference slide here. We've collected Microsoft's best practice recommendations on strategy, approach, and self-serve resources. Your goal here should be to review this and identify key assets you can immediately take advantage of as part of your action plan. We'd also encourage you to reach out to your implementation partners and review your Microsoft support contracts for additional guidance, specialized workshops, and individualized support plans. The Adoption Health Assessment is one of our best resources that's going to give you an easy and methodical way to improve adoption health. We're looking forward to hearing about your impact using today's approach and tools to build a robust adoption strategy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sophia. That is such an amazing tool. And I'm sure that many folks in our audience right now, and if I were in the audience, I would be asking the same thing. How do I get my hands on this? So if you would like access to the adoption planning workbook, the adoption health assessment tool, and even just giving us feedback, we want to hear from you. Please scan the QR code on your screen right now. And again, thank you so much for joining this session. We will be moving into a live Q&A now.